Over to you, sir.
Hello. A very good evening to everyone and good morning to Bhave sir and everyone who's joining us from the US and other places. Today we join for yet another edition of The Road Less Traveled, where we kind of take interviews of noteworthy physiotherapists and the path that they have traveled and how it has made a difference in their life. We hope that this journey or this path will somehow inspire the newer therapists to look at their profession a little differently and maybe travel the road, go on the path or go on the road which is less traveled. Today we have a very interesting combination where Bhave sir, our patron member for Physio TV, and he's our guide, he's been our mentor. He himself will be interviewing the power couple of physiotherapy, Dr. Savita Ravindra ma'am and Dr. Ravi sir. Before we go on to Bhave sir, I would just like to just give a very quick introduction to Bhave sir before we kind of continue. I'm sure now I have introduced Bhave sir so many times, and he has a curriculum vitae which can run into pages and easily be a chapter of a book. He is the clinical director of orthopedic rehabilitation and the director of Wasserman Gate Laboratory at Reuben Institute of Advanced Orthopaedics at Sinai Hospital in Baltimore, USA, Maryland. He is a recipient of several awards, including the Jacqueline Perry Award, the IAP Oration Award, and 4 times the champion of care at Sinai Hospital. He has quite a few patents filed, and which are some of them are pending, and apps which he has helped develop, including the Guardian Sport Extension Brace, the CKD device for contractures, the Triage app, which is used for THR and TKR patients, as well as co-author of the very famous Multiplier app, which is used for calculating limb lengths. He has many certifications to his credit and has been instrumental in developing a lot of rehab protocols of musculoskeletal conditions, prehab as well as post-op rehab. He is consultant with various therapeutic modality companies, including the Stryker and Cymedica. He's on the editorial board of many peer-reviewed journals, including Physical Therapy, Journal of Orthopedic Research, Clinical Biomechanics, just to name a few. And he has numerous grant projects and has 76 publications in peer-reviewed journals. He has also co-authored some textbooks of rehabilitation as well as orthopedics and is a faculty for the annual Baltimore Limb Deformity course. Over to you, Bhave sir. I guess you can take this forward and introduce Savita ma'am and Ravi sir.
Thank you, Sona. It was a great introduction. You always introduce me very long. Most people just say, hey, here is Anil. And that's the introduction. But thanks for that. And today I'm excited to chat with my friends from Bangalore. I first met Ravi and Savita in 1978. I was 76, I think, where I was playing a ping pong match against Ravi. And until then, I was like one of the better players at KEM Hospital. And I was very proud of that. And Ravi, I had no idea he's a very, very good ping pong or a table tennis player. And he beat me with I could not score more than 5 points. I was humiliated. And that's my first introduction to Ravi. He was 1 year junior to me. And then I have met them, of course, during my MSc time. We did MSc together. And they have kept in touch with me. I have visited them several times. We have met several times at different conferences and meetings. And Savita has even visited our center. And we still keep in touch. And it's very gratifying to see such a power couple that they have become. To name few of their things that Savita has done, basically, she is currently a professor and head of physiotherapy, also a COO of the Center for Rehabilitation at Ramaiah Hospital, Dean of Allied Health Services and Physiotherapy at Health University. So she has achieved a lot. She's also very prominent with Indian Association of Physical Therapy, as well as Society for Physiotherapy, has represented India internationally many times. I have visited her school at Ramaya, and the respect she has gotten from her students and the way she has created the institution, it's very, very impressive. And Ravi is equally great in what he does. And he has created this whole area of development for himself. He's practiced therapy for many years. He went abroad, came back. And when they settled in Bangalore, he started doing organic farming and land banking. And as an entrepreneur, he has done very well. He's reinvented himself after coming back to India after staying abroad, and has done very well. I thought that it would be appropriate to interview two of the most prominent therapists in terms of their achievements over the last 30 years. So, first question to Savita and Ravi: what made you go to physical therapy, or physiotherapy as it's called? Why did you go to physiotherapy?
See, I was aware of physiotherapy because my mother, 2 years before I joined physiotherapy, was having some problem with her neck, and then she was being treated at a hospital by a physiotherapist in Dadar. We were staying in Shivaji Park that time, and so I was aware of it. And then the circumstance, it was also, I found, was a 2 year course, the 2.5 years. And I found it interesting. So when it happened, when I passed out from intermediate and second intermediate science, the option was this.
What about you,
What
Savita?
Ravi is not saying is that his first love is design, and he cracked the National Institute of Design exam in Ahmedabad in late 80s. Late 78, 76, 78. But his parents said they hadn't heard of something called design, and they don't know anything about its scope. So they asked him to surrender the seat that he got. And so that's why. So
Okay.
going back to other routes and going back to design is like going back to his passion. That's what I would think.
Okay. What made you go to physiotherapy, Savita?
Anil, while studying, the science, we had a close family friend whose daughter was post-polio, and for a very long time, they were the Shahs. She used to go to KEM for physiotherapy, and she was kind of, directed or looked after by Miss Dastoor. And I went along with her a couple of times to KEM. So I had watched the kind of, I would say, scope, if you want to use the word in today's terms. And so when I was done, I was more or less sure that this is what I want to do. So that's how I went into it. I would say that it becomes critical in my understanding that if somebody wants to go down a particular road, what you have in the West, doing a bit of an observership when you have a break, would help you decide that. And I think that's what, so therefore I was very clear when I walked in that this was what I was doing. I didn't register for any of the other programs. So that's how I was there.
So let's talk about the early KEM days. Here you are, you enter first year PT school. What was it like? How was the experience? Was it something that you had expected, or something that you didn't expect? And how did it go initially?
For me, it was wonderful. It was home away from home, like that, So when we came, as you said, we used to play in the lunch break, table tennis, those rounder games, carom with Kopkar, Miss Kapadia, Professor Dastoor, and Mr. Parab even, and Savla Ram, all of them. It was a great family. Usha Jai Singh, we had amazing lecturers. Even our Irani, Mrs. Irani, and Venu Kothari was there for some time. So it was a very calm atmosphere. There's no pressure there. It was a very, very calm and peaceful time. And luckily for us, in our batch, there were a lot of boys. And your batch also, there were some boys, I think.
Two of them.
Two of them.
So we had I want to correct that. We had 11.
11.
We had 11 to start. And then slowly, they dropped. And finally, there were only 2 left.
So, but between the 2 batches, we could have a cricket match with the staff team.
Yeah.
So Matthews, Derek, all of them made us feel very, very comfortable. And an amazing.
What about you, Savita?
I mean, I think the best thing that probably for people like us that happened was to have been able to do our undergrad at KEM, because the role models that you saw there were amazing, because you carried that with you. I don't think I had all that fun that Ravi spoke about. It was there, but the very fact that you were in an environment called KEM, and you networked with a lot of colleagues from all of the other branches and things like that. I'm sure it happens to many places now, but KEM is KEM for what you grew up with. And then to have teachers like Ravi said, Ms. Dastur and Professor Shani. I mean, those are memories, or those are the trainings that I think made some of us what we are today. I would say that. Yeah. The grounding was very, very solid.
So I know you have always shared with me about your interaction with Professor Shahani, and how far, he had a great foresight, and he, had vision that was far beyond. I always have said that he was probably 20 years ahead of most of the smart people in India in KEM, and probably 50 years ahead of most people in India. That's how I felt initially. It was very impressive. But also you had great relationship with other teachers like Dastur and Ms. Dastur and Kapadia. So tell us a little bit more about that in terms of Professor Shahani, Dastur, and Ms. Kapadia.
Shani sir, we never understood him when we were undergrad students, I would remember having his class every Thursday, 11 to 12. That's a memory I have in a very strong way. And when he started the class, he asked us to imagine that we were sitting in Paris on a pavement and having a cup of tea. So we began every class in a new city, all imaginary. And then he built the story of what he wanted to teach us, which was a large part of it was neurophysiology and also electrotherapy. And he would talk around it. But, in our imagination, we were going around Paris, and he loved Czechoslovakia. So we went into Czechoslovakia. Yeah. And we went to London and all of those places. But I think it's when I finished undergrad and went back there for the masters. That's when you really understood, as you said, that Sir was 50 years ahead of his times. Amazing. And he had this network of people from around the world. So we had Nobel laureates coming to KEM, and, we were in awe of that kind of thing. And I have Andrew Huxley sign on my thesis book, and those kinds of things. So those are memories, and I would say role models that we look to. Miss Dastur was the one who grounded Sir, and but the point is that what they told us, and I still remember when I went to my first WCPT Congress to present a paper in 1982 at Stockholm. That was me and Suchita, who was my batchmate. And when both of us had to present, and we did that, and it was open to questions, we were paranoid because we said, we were in our 20s, we'd gone across the world, we didn't know what people were going to ask for. And then there were really almost no questions except a few comments and observations. And the chair of my session said, that is what comes out of Shani's lab. So we understood where Professor Shani was only when we went all the way out there. So they're big influencers.
Ravi, what about you? We used to play, I remember we used to play with Miss Kapadia, a lot of ping pong.
Yes,
we used to go on
ping pong,
hikes with
yeah.
her. So can you touch upon your interaction with Miss Kapadia and other staff members?
Amazing human being, amazing. I mean, we look forward to her lectures as well as even the lunch break. And even after the clinics got over, we would be hanging around there playing table tennis, carom. With Mr. Shahani, I had a different relationship. He used to call me home. I had gone to his house several times. And he has been talking about whiskey, how to drink whiskey, how to drink brandy, what kind of glasses you use for that, why you use that glass, and all sorts of. I cannot imagine. You never talk about anything else. He talked about so many different things which are so interesting.
Sir's passion for Hindustani music, I think some of us learnt that or understood the nuances from him. I understood which bread to go with which wine, those were the things. So the scope or I would say the canvas of conversation with Sir was so vast that that's a role model you will find very difficult to compete up to.
Sure. Going to your post BSc, but before that, I want to bring in some fun because it can't be all science and. So you guys are married for 36 years now, correct? 39 years, right? So did the sparks fly the first year or second year, or when did the sparks fly?
I don't know.
When did it happen?
We must not have realized that the spark had.
I think maybe at the end of when we were finishing undergrad. Yeah. Not before that. Yeah. I think like that. I'm not sure. I think.
What about you, Ravi?
I think so.
Same time?
Yeah.
And you said something about whiskey. I remember those crazy times we used to have parties on your terrace. It's still my best memory of getting drunk. So can you tell a little bit about that, how much fun it was? It's important for people to have fun in life too.
I think we had a very nice cozy gang. Kiran Bhatt was there.
Yeah.
Sometimes Kopkar would join as Vaidya, and most of our classmates Kamlesh.
Yeah.
And my brother used to be there also.
Yeah, I remember.
Whoever wants to bring whatever they want, and then we used to pour it in a bucket, and then we had a very huge terrace, and until everybody is able to not walk straight.
Yeah.
The gait is not proper, rather, according to you. Then we will stop drinking and then go to Aurora Theatre, and on that there used to be mats there and we'd have pav bhaji and all that and come back. We'd all pile ourselves into one car. Somehow we'll fit about 10, 11 people, and we used to go in there. It was...
that was a lot of fun. I did attend few of those, not many, but I attended few of those, and it was a lot of fun. But next day was very difficult to handle. The next day was impossible with all the mixtures that we used to drink.
I mean, there were the days. I think I'm glad we did those, whatever we did, and we have great memories of it.
Yes, I still remember those days. I tell that to everybody, and my son is like, "How could you mix everything? That is so ridiculous." But it's cocktail. It was a cocktail for us.
Yeah.
Anyway, going to the serious side, MSc. You decided to enroll both in MSc. That was our first batch. Correct? Am I right?
She's a year ahead of me.
Okay.
I have to say something. When I finished bachelor's degree,
Yeah.
and all of us in the batch were going all over the place in Mumbai trying to find jobs.
Yeah.
And the most interesting part is I must have done about 15 interviews and I didn't get a single job.
Really?
I didn't get selected. I didn't, So I always call, if you want to use that good word, failure, that was my first failure of life. I couldn't. And I saw all of my batchmates, everybody go through the interview, have a job. At that point in time, they opened up what was called the senior demonstrator post because the previous batch had finished. So I came here and applied, started to work, and they announced that they were starting masters in physiotherapy for the first time in India in 1978. And I said, and then of course, Ms. Dastoor, Professor Shani, all of them said, why don't you people apply? And we just applied and we got a seat. And so it was, most people said at that time, why do you want to do a master's? Nobody has a master's, you better go and get a job. But the truth was I didn't get a job. So it's like I joined masters because I didn't get a job, and the rest for me is history.
Yeah, I had to leave a job to join masters. I was working at Children's Orthopaedic Hospital then. It was a temporary position. It wasn't permanent, but still it was a job. And I left it and I took a chance. I didn't know any better. I said, why not? What about you, Ravi? What made you go to MSc?
I think once Savita had joined, and I think it was natural progression. See, there is nothing else. There is nothing to, if I had done my BSc, it was a natural progression that I must get into MSc, and we had an opportunity to do it in the same college, in the same. It was, for me, it was a wonderful thing. KEM itself was a home away from home, because the kind of doctors we had, giants, Dr. GBP and Ellen Vora, RM Bansali, Rui Fernandez, Dr. Kirtane, name it. They were all absolute giants in the field, Bhavdekar, and they were giving us such wonderful lectures. The class, it was, I think I don't think I would have done it any other way. It's really nice. It was nice.
I still remember a funny thing about Dr. Bhavdekar. I used to love him. People who understand Marathi will understand him better. But his registrars and his fellows knew what he was saying. He would always say, "Tete, patient number 19 आहे ना, त्याचं ह्याचं हे करून टाका. त्याचं ते करून टाका." And then, those guys that worked with him understood what he meant. And he would move to the next patient. So that's a funny thing. So Savita, for you, how was the interaction at KEM working with other than the PT faculty, meaning the physicians around you? You were a senior demonstrator. You worked there for a few years after that, correct?
I went on to take a faculty position, and I worked 8 years in KEM till 1988.
Correct. So how was that transition that you saw of Shahani sir, retiring out, Ms. Dastoor taking more prominent role?
I was not there when I left KEM. Both of them were still there. Sir was still in chair. But the point is that by the time we were entered as faculty, and I had quite a few of my batchmates who were there already. Vikas was one of the colleagues, and Arundhati was there. The point is that Professor Shani, Ms. Dastoor, Ms. Kapadia had built that foundation of a working relationship between the clinicians and physical therapy professionals. So, because physiotherapy started in KEM way ahead of when we joined. It was already 20-25 years down the road. So we grew up, or we thrived in that environment. And I think that was one of my biggest take-homes, that you need to build the bridges. You cannot stay in ivory towers and expect people to understand what physical therapy can offer. So down the years, much when I came back and I came to Ramaya, that was the beginning of academic physical therapy, if you call it, in Karnataka. And so one of the first things that group of us did was build our relationship from scratch with every single clinician with whom we would work with and interact with. And I think those learnings for me was the 8 years that I worked in KM. I mean, whether it was respiratory medicine department, whether it was the cardiac department, or even the orthopedic team, you could go up to them, you could stand up with them, and you can, converse on a case, discuss it out, and they would understand your perspective. You can't stay in your environment and presume that that is not there. So for me, I think one of the biggest steps for physical therapy is that there needs to be that connect between the various clinician groups in which we are included. And unless you connect with that stakeholder called patient, I don't think you can build yourself as to who you are. When I say yourself, I mean you, the physiotherapist. And I think that grounding came from KM.
You said it very well, because that's a problem that is caused by either lack of understanding or ego most of the times. And if you set that aside and be a team player, a lot of things can happen much better. And there are a lot of physicians who are actually wanting that collaboration. I'm not saying 100%, but the majority of them, they want their patient better anyway. So a team effort, collaborative effort goes a long way. That was my lesson too. I've always worked in collaboration. So it's very interesting that you say the same thing and you follow the same thing. So Ravi, for you, when Savita was at KM, you did other things. You worked at Piramal, you did the sports team. So give me some highlights of that. What was that like?
I had failed in my final year once. So the next 6 months I was to be in KM until I got my junior demonstrators position.
Okay.
And as senior demonstrators, these people did not leave, so I could not get a senior demonstrator's position. So I continued for another 6 months there as a junior demonstrator. And then as a part-time, and then since I took up MSc, so I went to KEM Hospital, part-time physiotherapist at the KEM Hospital.
Okay.
I was working there. And then that allowed me also to work in other places, because so I was in Mahavijay Clinic. And then when Mrs. Chainani, she started the Piramal Sports Center, she had told me to come and I joined them. And we could work with a lot of really elite athletes and from all walks of life. Palume Roy, who was a great dancer, she used to come, and then Pandit Jasraj used to come there. So, and very big. It's a introduction to really big people. When Sarkar used to come there for treatment, it was the best the money could buy was already there. They had bought it. So it was, and I was exposed to Ajay Piramal, all of them. So it was a different world to a certain extent, because I could see the difference, and that really helped me to see how these people do things, I mean,
Sure. Tell me a little bit about your interaction with Mrs. Chainani, because that you worked with her, right?
Yes. She is a wonderful lady. She was a saint almost. Such quiet. She would, I don't think anybody would come, he would calm down in front of her. Such a soft spoken lady. I mean, an amazing personality to be working with. Even if she were to say she were unhappy with you also, she would say it so sweetly on your face. And, it was wonderful. Then there was Saurabh and Kumi Mistry, the Mistry Foundation I work for. It was also really a wonderful experience,
So after graduating from MSc and starting to work in India for 5, 6, 7 years that you did you have any regrets? Or was it a very positive experience throughout your first 5 years of life as
We didn't know
professional?
anything else. We didn't know anything else. But the point is, I continued to work in KEM, and that's the only environment that I knew. And I didn't have any regrets for sure. Because, with all of your faculty around, for us, every day was a learning. And in KEM, with the volume of work that is there, I
Sure.
don't think you can pause to regret also, because there's no time for that also, for what you're doing. So.
What about you, Ravi? Any regrets?
No, I had no regrets, but by that time I had already started thinking about other things. Though I was very serious about patients, and there was first patient was a cancer patient, and I had to thank Vikas Rajadiksha for it. I was playing table tennis, and Ruby Rangwala, the physiotherapist at Tata, came, and there's a patient. You take him. So Vikas said, I cannot go to Babulnath. So I used to go. And we had to give, since I had worked with Dr. Bapat for with ultraviolet, the anaerobic active disinfecting with an ultraviolet lamps.
Okay.
So I had taken it from Kiran Bhatt.
Okay.
I used to go and take. And I saw so many things. I mean, Dr. Bapat had sent me to Mr. Pawar, who was my patient. He used to call me only at 11:30 in the night. That was the only time he used to have free time for treatment. So I had just no regrets. There was no time for regrets. And Kiran Bhatt had introduced me to some of his relatives. So I had bought some land already in Pune, Lonavala.
Okay.
And that's when it had started.
Okay. So after that, Ravi, you went for a short time to Dubai.
Yes.
And came back. What was that like? That was early Dubai period. The oil boom wasn't really there. It was still being built. How was Dubai and your 1 year there?
Dubai was nice, and I stayed with Kamlesh because the moment I went there, minimum time to stay was 11 months, then I could get. So then Savita also had come, and then we couldn't get some help to look after Varun, who was already 1 year old by then. 1 year, 2 years. Then Savita decided it is not a place for her, and she left. She didn't take up.
Savita, why did you decide that? Why did you decide, Savita, Dubai was not place for you?
I'm not sure any of those reasons are valid today, but in hindsight, but at that point in time, I couldn't imagine myself being anywhere else other than KEM. And so I had gone there for a short holiday for 2 months or 3 months. And I looked at his work in timings and all that, and Kamlesh's, and then I looked at the fact that they didn't have creches, and I wouldn't know how to manage a 2-year-old. And the work day was very long, and then you always were on calls after that. So, and then if I had to work, then it would be rather thing. Or I think I was at that point in time not ready for the transition, I think, if I think back on it now. And I said, no, this is not for me. I need to go back. And so I just left and came back to Mumbai. So can't really put my finger on why, but just a gut feeling that this is not what I want to do.
Okay. So then we come to the big thing that happened in your life. You guys went to Kuwait. Then you had to come back.
Yeah.
And then you went again.
Yeah.
So I want to give you a free hand at that and, not interrupt you and tell me about your experience in Kuwait. Many of the listeners today don't know what Gulf War was. They are probably born after the Gulf War. So, just to put the perspective, there were many invasions that have happened. The Iraq first invasion was by the first President Bush in 1990s. And that was when actually Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait. And then in response to that, the Allied forces invaded Iraq through Kuwait. And at that time you were in the epicenter, you and Husaina, right? Husaina and her husband.
Because
You
was
were
also there, but he had come back on a holiday. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, I remember that. So Husaina is my batchmate, by the way, for people who are listening. I know you to know that. So I want to give you the free hand, and I want you to tell people what that whole experience was, how you went there, how you had to come back and then go back again and settle again. So go ahead. You have the free hand at this.
Maybe I do a bit and then Ravi. I think that going to Kuwait was a very conscious decision. And a couple of things that happened, I must say this to people out there listening. When a friend of mine said that there's a faculty position in Kuwait, why don't you come in and do an interview? I did that. It was one of my first international being interviewed for a job position. And when they were looking at my CV and there was a big table that was doing that interview, the first thing, there was this American colleague. He looked at my CV and he said, so you've done your master's in 80 and then you've been publishing till 82 or 80. And then between 82 and 85, 86, I don't see any publication in your CV. What happened? I was not expecting that question at all. I expected all kinds of questions. So I just said I got married and I had a kid. I had to take a break. And then he looked at me and said, then you don't have a position in this place. In academia and research, there has to be a continuity. That's all the question I have for you on this panel. The others can take over. You can imagine my heart sank and I said, why? Much later when I worked with him and his name was David, I said, David, how could you be so harsh? He said, it's not about being harsh. If you slip by the way in academia, you stop publishing along the way. And then when you don't do that, he says, you don't have a right to be in academia. Because he says, because research and academics go together, and publication is your only proof of your connect with research when he's talking about academia. And he said, I had to say that to you to understand that if you choose to be in academia in future, you're not going to make that mistake. So, it hit quite hard at that point in time. And so I almost feel uncomfortable when I see long gaps when I look at academic CVs, when people have a blank that is spread over a few years. It kind of is not a comfortable feeling. That aside, it was for me in academics, it was the most, I would say, relearning experience of what it means to be a teacher. They followed a North American curriculum. I had no idea about clock hours, credit hours. So they sent me back to education school to study and understand how to write a curriculum, what are clock hours, what are credit hours, what's the value of all that. And so it was one of the most, fulfilling experiential learning. So here I knew exactly how Indian system works in academics, and I know how the North American system works. So if I look at a CV and I look at the credits, I understand how can I fit it to an Indian curriculum. And I think if you're in academics, you as a teacher need to be, or an administrator, you should be very versatile in understanding this here. And then we had 2 years, and I think it was in July of 1990, my second kid Arjun was born in the first week of July. And I was coming back to India for a holiday because it's very hot in the Gulf in the summer.
Vacation had started.
Yeah, and my vacation had started. So when I was coming to India, and he had a lot of health issues of neonatal jaundice. So most of our Indian pediatricians said, take the flight and go home. It'll be better in India. I flew out with a baby who was 11 days old into India. So in today's day and time, when people, come back from maternity after 6 months, and if they're still dragging their feet, I internally just smiled to myself and said, hello, give me a break. But that's me, maybe harsh. But I was 11 days after delivery. He was 11-day-old baby. And then I said, am I good enough to take the flight? And so the neonatologist said, if he's born in a normal delivery, he's good enough even to go to the moon. Just go. So we came home. And then we never returned because the Gulf War happened. Ravi came to drop me for a week, but couldn't go back. And that was the biggest nightmare of our life that began, And we were penniless. Our money was in the banks in Kuwait, and the banks were frozen in the Gulf War. We had not saved any money in India.
We had loans.
We had loans to pay, and I was not in a position to work because of a small baby. And it was one of the hardest 1 year of our life. I wouldn't say 1 year, 6 months of our life. Anil, the lesson and we couldn't reach out to anybody, and nobody was probably very comfortable looking at me and Ravi because, we were like almost, will they ask us for some more loan? So
no, we didn't take loan from anybody. Yes. We
started from scratch, but Indian government called us refugees. So we still have a refugee seal on our passports, at that passport. And we could get admission for our son in any school. And so we came to Bangalore, put him in a school. And we had nothing in the house. It was a new house with 4 walls. So we slept on the floor, and Ravi worked from 6 a.m. in the morning to 11:30 in the night in physical therapy.
But it is luck that I could work. It is not that I work from 6 to 11, but it is the possibility that I could work and earn money. That was, I didn't know anything. It was help my sister-in-law and also our classmate, Aarti Prasad. We know her as Kami.
Yeah.
She told, why don't you go to Wokhat Hospital? Because Aarti practices in the other side of the town near Jayanagar. Wokhat. I knew Wokhat only as some pharmaceutical company. I didn't know they were into hospital. So I went and met there Vivek Javli. So he said, "इथे काय करतोस तू? काय करतो?" अरे मी काम शोधतोय. He said, "Join us." And at that point of time, Vivek was there, Khanolkar was there, the cardiologist, and then it was the beginning of cardiac surgery. Vivek as a pioneer, in the sense, the first cardiac surgeries in private hospitals in Bangalore started by him. Okay. And he joined, and there were 5-6 surgeries a day. And he said, you give away a package, and then you see that the patients are sent back by 7 days. They are all right. We don't want any complications.
Okay.
So I was working from morning to the night, and then it was really an experience.
So by the time we
you survived. You survived in India for about a year.
Yeah. Survived.
One of the things, Anil, it taught, I think, both of us that when your chips are down, you can stand up if you are strong on your feet, on your profession. You could stand up.
Yeah. Repeat that, please. Repeat that for everybody. It's important lesson. Repeat that.
Yeah. When your chips are down and out, and genuinely our chips were down and out. What we earned, we bought and ate with for the first 3 months. But when your chips are down, if your grounding is solid, you have the will, you can stand up.
It was tough times. Because I still remember our house, because it was not, only one room had the flooring.
Yeah.
It was under construction house we moved into because we got in there. And my brother gave me a fan. And it was such a great relief, that you didn't have to spend for a fan. And somebody gave it.
And so it was. And even when we went, so when the year got over and they wanted us to go back, by then, I think Ravi was doing pretty well in Bangalore. But this thought, we had left everything back in Kuwait. Not just money, the home. Today, I have to say to you that I lost everything in my life that I possessed before 1990. I do not own it in my life. I don't even own original Bombay University degree certificates. I had to make a duplicate from Bombay University. I own nothing in my life. No, everything that I carried when I traveled, it was taken away by whomever. And when I went back to Kuwait, because the university was opening first, and so I went back first.
Hold that thought for a second. I want to ask you about that. So after a year, or 6 months, was it 6 months? 1 year. So after a year, the Gulf War settled down, Kuwait was reoccupied. Did they make you an offer to come back, or you chose to go? How did that work out?
They made an offer for many of us to go back, and we kind of, in my case, it was the university. So the university sent a request through the Kuwait consulate in India. We had a permanent addresses. They had, so then we got the letter saying, and Ravi had a window that he could come back in 1991 up to December. I had a window that said 30th August, university is opening for September, you need to come back. We had 2 young kids and they weren't giving any children's visa to come back. So we had that big dilemma of our life, who goes first? So I had a deadline to go before him, and I said, I'm going. So what I did, that time we had 1 kid, Varun. So I wrote back to the university and said that I need to come back. I have a 5-year-old kid or 4-year-old, and I will not travel without him because it's not possible. Normally, in the Gulf countries, women do not get the right of the children flying back with them. It's the husband who files a visa for them. But the university wrote back through the Delhi consulate that you can, we make a special exception. And so Varun was the only guy on the flight that flew back as a child to Kuwait with me. So that's how we went back. And Ravi came back after that. But there was nothing in that house. They had redone the whole house and given us a brand new apartment with nothing of our belongings from before 1990.
So somebody had ransacked it, taken away everything.
Yeah.
Taken away, and then our memories were not important for them. So they did not preserve it. I mean, they just had cleaned up everything, that's all.
Our cars were like, no wheels, no steering wheel, no seats. It was just a shell. 1 car next to each other, because they took away everything and only the shell was there. And that was true about all cars at that point in time. None of us had that cars. So we used to have 1 car with 1 colleague and we would drive through. Those are different experiences because the oil wells were burning and we had to wind up our day at 2:30 in the afternoon and come home, because they would close 1 or 2 oil wells per day. Until next morning, you had black smoke till the floor on the road. So we would watch it out of our windows. And that was one of the biggest projects I did, that we looked at pulmonary function testing in post-oil burnouts. And that was a volume of work that was done at that point in time by us. So those experiences, I would say, are life experiences. For me, you can push me to a corner. It's better because then I'll come back.
How long did you stay after you went back?
95, 96.
So you stayed for a couple more years, 3-4 more years. And then what made you decide to come back to Bangalore? What changed? Ravi changed you. Okay. So Ravi, what happened?
By that time,
many people stay in places like Kuwait and Dubai. They retire there and come back and settle in India. You decided to come back in 3 years. What happened?
See, I was a salaried person, whatever it may be. I mean, and there was nothing like private practice. I used to work for the social affairs, where I was in charge of a club. There are several clubs, football clubs, basketball clubs, and that was the additional amount of income I could get. But then there was a limit to it, And I decided, by that time I had already bought reasonable amount of lands in Bangalore, near Hosur, Tamil Nadu. And I decided to set right all those things and get back.
So you had basically invested your earnings in Kuwait into land already because you had a
Yes.
foresight.
Yeah.
What made you think that at that time to buy land like that? What made you think? It wasn't very common in 1990s to invest in land. It wasn't something that people did. They used to put money in the bank, in CDs, or buy gold. What made you buy land?
No, see, we were comfortable. But then the year that we came back, I realized we should be at a stage where even if tomorrow I don't do anything, my lifestyle continues without any stress because it was very stressful. You know that one word Vokhat told by my Arti, Kami, was made a lot of difference to me, that I could get into that time. It was all timing, and I met with Dr. Vivek Javli, Manolkar, and it was. And then, it's just timing, that's all.
I think that when we were talking about it in 95, 96, one of the things Ravi said is, I have worked for people enough. I'm going to start working for myself.
Good point.
And yeah, as a thing. And physical therapy, fine, but I need to go beyond.
And by that time, I'd invested in a clinic, very, very good clinic in Bangalore, in a very elite place. I had a wonderful place, and I had a good clientele, and a lot of people where I was continuing the physiotherapy practice as well as going to the farm every day. And then by that time, the colleges had academic people would call, they would need anybody with a master's degree for a job. So I joined another college, Vivekananda Institute.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, there, as a professor.
As a faculty there.
As a fact, no, I was in charge of that thing. As one of the faculty, I was in charge.
Okay.
And by the time.
So I noticed that you do what you call organic farming.
Yes.
Is that a passion? Is that a business?
No.
Or a hobby?
No, it is not. See, it was a business once upon a time, but the organic, I knew about farming as much as what we studied in our schools. You sow seed and it comes. And then we had bought land already. And then I was at that time connected very much with SPCA. And there's Cuba. So they had a lot of animals which did not have home and they were lame and suffering. Then I thought, since I have a lot of land, I'll put the animals there, board them there. So I built a shed 100 by 100. So all them, but it never occurred to me that they eat, It just was so silly. I mean, it just didn't occur. And we have started growing grass, maize, this, that, everything to feed the animals. And then the whole chakkar of farming. And then I had at that time we needed pipelines, all infrastructure for the farm. We didn't have electricity. We used to run it on generators. It was almost 150 acres. We had a lake inside of 12 acres there inside. And agent there was Captain Gopinath, who was of the Deccan Airlines. He came to my farm. He was a Jain irrigation pipe dealer for Karnataka. So he said, what kind of farming are you doing here? I said, what kind? I mean, I didn't know there were many kinds, He said, organic? Or I said, you tell me what, you should do organic. Then he explained me the whole thing about organic farming. We became friends. And that's how the organic thing started. Then I knew what was organic food. Now, of course, everybody knows. 95.
Yeah.
95, 96.
That's you were at that time you were a trailblazer. That's not something that people thought of or did it. That's pretty unique. So I want to go back to Savita for a second. So Savita, did you secure your job at Ramaya when you left Kuwait, or you came back here and then you worked you went straight to Ramaya, is that right?
Yeah, I think in 96, in Karnataka, I mean, there were other places that started like Bangalore, but Bangalore started physical therapy programs. So there are a couple of institutions that came up. My reason for choosing Ramaya is I strongly believe as an academician, that you need to start physical therapy within a framework of, that's my belief, um, of a framework of a medical college with its own vibrant hospital, or at least you need to have a setup that has physical therapy where there's a hospital. Because if you don't have the grounding for your students of a hospital, then you can very easily see the difference from students coming out from programs that don't have strong clinical this. So there were a couple of them coming up, Ramaya, for two reasons. One, it was in the zone, or as I call it, the north of Bangalore, where we lived. And it was a medical college already with a hospital. There was a physical therapy department. For me, everything, when I interviewed, fell into place, and I said, this is what I would be, this is the kind of place I'd be comfortable working with. So it just happened. And since then, I haven't looked back.
And you came as a head of the department already from Kuwait?
Yes. So I always look at the Ramaya program and I think it's my baby. Because I came in and the first batch of students came in and joined us in 1996. And it's 25
So you
years.
had to do a lot of legwork in terms of getting the school operational, doing all the infrastructure, the legwork, the hiring people, everything.
Yeah. So these 25 years have been a journey, Anil. In the sense, we did the bachelor's, we had the batch out, we started masters, then we had the batches out. We now have a PhD program on a vertical. But our clinical has grown from what it was as a teaching hospital. And as I said to you earlier, the biggest lesson learning for people is, if you want to make physical therapy grow within a hospital, make your presence felt. Make your presence felt by the quality of work you do, for what you deliver within a hospital, and for the network that you build with your clinicians and administrators. You may be doing the best of the job, but if people around you don't realize what you are delivering, it doesn't. So I still strongly believe that old thing that if you're in a hospital, attend rounds with the team is so critical even today, because it's a betterment for the patient, but it's also a time you profile to the other clinicians just who you are and what you can deliver, because I don't like when you write in progress notes, physiotherapy given, It's like, giving nutrition or giving bedpan or giving something like that. I just don't believe that. Your documentation has to tell the story of what you did. So these are big learning lessons. And I think that physiotherapy, I know about our campus, I have a very solid team. And that helped because it's a very cohesive team, very solid clinically. So if you don't have clinical acumen with me, I'm not comfortable to hire you. I'm not comfortable because.
So even as a faculty teaching, you must do competency, you must have clinical competency. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because it's like the KEM model. Most of the classes happen in the afternoon, including myself. My every staff of mine is in clinical practice, and in the Monday to Saturday, in a good part of the day, and then there is the take-home academia. So it is, it's dual responsibility. And now we add on saying that you have to have a research profile, you have a publication profile. So yes, it's a lot, but that's how the programs run in India. That's how they do. So sometimes it's a huge balancing act.
Is that the Ramaya specialty, or is this something that is happening across in India, many places?
It's across India, many places is how I would say it. It definitely happens in institutions which have their own hospital, where the faculty will be doubling up to work as clinicians in the hospital as well as taking on academic roles. So that's something that you will see across India. You could have institutions that have tie-up hospitals, so they may have a different, I would say, work style management, may have, I'm saying. But for me, at the core of being a clinician is critical, because I feel that if my student sees all of us go down on our knees and work with patients, you can't have a better role model than that for what you want to make of your students. You cannot. It's when they see you work hands down with patients, it's a thing. So it's a very different style compared to North America. We don't have clinical educators. Even when you have your students sent away to a hospital where you may not go as faculty, clinical educators sync with the universities are not there in India, to the best of my knowledge. And therefore, I would say it's a cut if you don't do that.
Nowadays, there is a move towards problem-based teaching. And that started with PT schools in Delaware, Pittsburgh, many places, where there is no real, you do get your fundamentals, but it's all related to clinical problems. So everything is a clinical problem, starting from day one. So they're changing here into that. And then last year is totally clinical practice. The whole year is just treating patients. So people are changing, and I'm glad you're pioneer, because I don't think in 95 or 96 when you started, other schools in India were doing it like that. I mean, I may be wrong.
We did it in KEM, didn't we?
Yes.
I mean, our teachers...
KEM was a trailblazer. It was unique. In what I remember in Haji Ali, same thing happened. As an MSc student, I had to treat patients in the morning until 12. I have a very fond picture of treating a polio patient with all the hair on my head during my MSc time. And then Chanani teaching a point to me about something. I have two pictures that I cherish them. So, so that's very interesting that you have implemented that. I also noticed that you've done a lot of work in terms of society, in terms of building the awareness, trying to make physiotherapy association better. I have heard a lot of things about Indian Association of Physiotherapy, back and forth about where it was, then it was de-recognized, recognized. You started the SIP. I'm part of that Society of Indian Physiotherapy. I like it. I come there often for those meetings. So what is your personal opinion about things that have happened to the physiotherapy profession in India, especially in the larger scale of physiotherapy association as a profession?
I think that there are good times and hard times. I would like to look at it like that. And so there were a lot of, the association has been very strong. And then somewhere in 2009, there were issues and there were differences that took the association to court. And there was a lot of, I would say, forward, backward and struggle. And then people kind of, and that was around the time also that we were de-recognized by WCPT, who wasn't sure who is the association, which is the governing body, and that. And then subsequently, it was decided that these issues need to be resolved in the, I would say, in the interest of the profession. And that exercise was done. And then the team that's in place subsequently have worked together to put back the National Association in a framework of working. They also, I think, applied to WCPT because they are the single largest association of our country. And they are back to WCPT. And I just want to say something that walking down the road on WCPT is that people must understand that you have to decide as an individual. I mean, everybody can be happy with what they do, and everybody has their directions or roles. I think the 1982 of me and Suchita going to WCPT changed us as persons from a perspective of the profession. Anil, I have attended, except for two or three, I have attended every single WCPT Congress till recently. Except the one at Switzerland, which I didn't do, and the last one was online. But if you want India to thrive in an international market, you need to have torchbearers who are willing to go out there and hoot for India. You need that, because and Miss Dastur and Professor Mukashi sir and a lot of those people did it in their times. And I think from 1982, and then there was a gap. And I think there are things that people need to understand, that when India started to take a very proactive role in our region, and again it was Ms. Dastur who pushed it, and I tagged behind her on those things. And so from in the AWP region from 2001, there's not a single regional conference I have not attended. My belief is that when we go there, when we network, we build the body of Asia. As an Indian association or an Indian physiotherapy group, we've done a lot for Asia, for Southeast Asia, if you're talking in the WHO region. We got Afghan physiotherapists to come from diploma, got them to bridge into physical therapy. We got a couple of them to become masters through scholarship in the universities. We have uplifted a lot while Ms. Dastur and I was on AWP to bring Sri Lankans in. We've done that for Vietnam to help them out. So I think that in the annals of history, India needs to be there for what we do, because we have a large thing. There are things that we had put together in terms of, I would say there are policy documents in WCPT that countries put forward as concerns. So among that, we had pushed, Ms. Dastur had pushed us to put a policy document for the world to understand role of PTs in disaster management. And if you look into policy documents in the WCPT website, 2007, that policy document is credited to India. So have we contributed? Of course. So I think that we must step out. If that is a passion you have, and you may get sponsorship, you may not get sponsorship. In the beginning years, we learned to save from 4 years and go to these conferences, to stand with people, to network with people from different parts of the world. It's such a humbling experience. We would go there, there would be 10,000 PTs, and the quality that they speak, Anil, it is unbelievable. You don't know which session to attend, and you have to make choices. So I believe people must stop living in cocoons. You must stop saying, I will go to Pune conference, I will go to Trivandrum conference. By all means, go there. Step out of the country. Travel is your biggest teacher in life.
So coming to our recent challenges, as COVID, I never call it Corona, by the way. That's only for beer. I always call it COVID. So coming to COVID-19, we all had to regroup, learn lessons, do different things. And one of the topic that comes up all the time, and there's a debate going on, raging debate going on of the value of tele-rehabilitation. And the reason I ask you is you are a teacher, you change people's minds. And if you look at the logo of WCPT or American Physical Therapy Association, it's hands like this. That's the logo. And now everybody wants to focus on tele-rehabilitation, that's going to take over the world, blah, blah, blah. You hear advertisements everywhere on Instagram, LinkedIn, everything. What's your take home about the tele-rehabilitation? Because I have my personal opinions biased by orthopedic, because that's all I do. What's your impression on tele-rehabilitation? And what are you telling your students in your school?
I can tell you what I think tele-rehabilitation is happening in parts of India in terms of, people are doing it in different areas. I can tell you from our perspective, what we've been doing in tele-rehab, One of the things that we have very strong is we work with the older persons, if you want to call it the geriatric healthcare, whatever. In 2020, by June, we had a very vibrant geriatric population that was who would come to our group exercise programs, who reached out to us and said, we are all getting, not doing so well in ambulation or in moving around, do something. So the team that looks after, I would say elderly, sometime in July or August 2020, the team started two times a week tele-rehab group exercise program. We've completed one year, and we continue to do with 64 members a group exercise program as part of tele-rehab. We do tele-rehab again for ortho. We've started tele-rehab for cardiac rehab because patients are hesitant to come into the hospital immediately after the wave 2. So we've done tele-rehab, but we have our ways of doing it. We like them to visit us once. We get our consent forms and those things going. We put our checks and balances. Is it equal to this, what you would do in a physical? Answer is no, but it's next best to that. There are teleconsults for most areas that my department staff are doing now. Where it's asked for.
I'm sorry. Would you say that it's a hybrid model that you have adopted? Because that's what many people are adopting. It's like a hybrid model.
Yeah.
Where you reduce the number of visits to the clinic.
Yes.
And you follow a hybrid model. So Ravi, going to this, as an entrepreneur, do you see this as a business idea that can actually grow in Asia in terms of a business, reaching out to people who otherwise could not be reached or did not have access to?
I'm sure. There's a great possibility. There are many people doing in various fields. And I'm sure this will also come about, and your reach becomes more. I'm sure, as Savita said, it is the next best thing in terms of having a contact one-to-one. But
it's an art, Anil, that has to be learned. It's an art, and people need to train themselves, because you can do a very easy Zoom meeting like this, but I don't think you should call that tele-rehab, So tele-rehab has some SOPs that you need to have learned those SOPs and then work around that and use, when you're out of the wave, you use a blended model, and when you're into the wave, then you use a tele-rehab model, is how I would look at it.
So changing gears, going back to Ravi. So Ravi, you are already a very successful entrepreneur. You have land, you have farms, you do other things, I presume. I mean, you're doing other businesses. What's the next big thing for you? Where do you see the future for business as you as businessmen going for India?
We are doing a state-of-the-art cardiac rehabilitation center.
He's not talking physiotherapy.
Other than physiotherapy,
as a business person, where do you see the opportunities, and what are you doing currently? So go ahead, and even if it's physiotherapy, that's fine.
I am focusing on farms, weekend farms, getaway farms, and building farmhouses. This because people have now learned that they can do much of the work outside, sitting in their house. There are so many people who work from home. So they have certainly, for some people, this is a great opportunity, and they can live outdoors. And there is a certain amount of safety in such places. Gated communities. And that's what we have been doing. Our projects are, I would say, are extraordinarily good projects with a lot of greenery, different kinds of, all sorts of plants, trees, and we have, because of this kind of atmosphere, a lot of birds. It's inviting for the birds to come there. So, and everything is.
So for Ravi, it's land, and more land.
And developing the line. Okay, you said something about cardiac rehab. What are you doing there?
We're starting a cardiac rehabilitation center
Okay, in Bangalore?
in Bangalore, and we want to expand on that.
Okay, so you want to do like a franchise modeling
Yes, yes, yes.
all over India?
Yes, yes.
Very good. I mean, you have great advisor at home. You don't need any further advisor. You have Savita to advise you. I think that alone is more than enough.
Not the entrepreneur part of it.
No, the science part of it.
The science part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the science part of it. Entrepreneur part, Ravi knows very well. He's made it successful anyway.
Yeah.
So we are coming to the end, and I'm going to give you the time to talk about your take-home message for people who are young and aspiring to be therapists. And go ahead and please share your thoughts in terms of your message to them.
I think you have to be very sincere, very empathetic towards the patient, and believe in your dreams. Don't be skeptical about your own dreams, because there are skeptics all around. Let the skeptics do their job. You dream and work hard to achieve your dreams.
Nicely said. Nicely said. What about you, Savita?
No, learning from my own kids, I've realized that people, not necessarily, and maybe that was true with when we were younger, people really don't want advice. So I'm not going to put it in traditional advice. I can only say to you that I was fortunate to have my passion and my dreams on the same plate. I was passionate about physiotherapy, and I have dreamt only about physiotherapy. It's just, one of those lucky stories of life. But if you decide to stay in physiotherapy and you don't get up in the morning and feel, wow, I'm going to work, then you're in the wrong place. And like Ravi said, it's time to move on, because you will make no change to the environment of physical therapy. And if you are passionate, go out and dream big, and things will happen. When we started in physiotherapy, I must tell you, in Ramaya, we had a department, clinical department, that was about 1,500 square feet. But at some point, I looked at what Anil has and I said, I can't have something so small. I need to have something as big as Anil's. So I went to my administration and said that the next future is rehabilitation and return to health. So the admin told me, write a concept note. Believe me, I didn't have an idea of how to write concept note. So I went and took an online course on how to write concept notes. And then I went and wrote a concept note. And when they read it, I did a financial statement. I wrote them the income, the expenditure, and a word called EBITDA. For those of you who know what is EBITDA, great. Don't know, as physical therapists, go and read up about it. And I went and presented it to the administration and said, this is what I want. And I want to go out and look at physical therapy departments and come back and set it up. But my paper of concept was solid enough for me to send me to Anil's center. And when I came back, and then I said, here's what I want. So they said, how much space you want? I said, 10,000 square feet. They said, we're giving you 15,000 square feet. Start a rehab center. Believe in yourself, you will take the profession.
Great. So I want to thank both of you. You are the power couple. And Ravi, I call him fondly Raja. He calls me Raja. So Raja, thank you very much for attending this. And Savita, thank you. And we'll, of course, keep collaborating with each other at meetings such as SIP. I'm looking forward to next one soon. Once again, thank you. And thank you, Sancheti and Physio TV Group, for giving me this opportunity to interview my friends. And it was great. Thanks again. Over to you, Sona.
Thank you.
So I was just hearing to the whole story that Savita ma'am and Ravi sir were talking, and there were so many interesting facets. I mean, there's so much lifelong of learning experience that someone can take just from your journey. And as an alumni of GS myself, I mean, we have had the greats even teaching. In fact, Shani sir was still around. And I remember we used to attend his lectures and he used to go all over the globe, while he was taking. And he talked a lot about Aldous Huxley. And wow, and he had talked about him visiting the center. And y'all were one of those lucky ones who could even get an autograph on a book. I mean, that's something that is much, much memorable and a part of history, I can say, that we were not a part of. I'm very envious about that. And I guess you all lived in a different era altogether, and the lifelong lessons that you all learned and the experiences that you all had, I mean, are unmatched. I mean, even when, as you said, when the chips were down and out, I mean, that itself was a big learning experience. And I remember Savita ma'am telling me that you come to know who your friends really are, during that time, the ones who stood by you, or. But all in all, I think even as a journey of a professional, I mean, each of y'all just took a little different paths, but ultimately, I guess the values were just the same about building the profession to a new and putting it in a pedestal, which I guess we all have been striving for. And I guess we can have these small lessons of, I mean, I'm someone who believes that we have to go down on our knees and treat patients with students to show them how, the thing is done. So I'm a big believer in that. So I was very happy to hear that again, those words coming back to me from Savita ma'am. And I guess the whole interview, I wish it didn't end. I wish I could keep hearing more and more, and Bhave sir putting little more inputs about your student days. I guess the fun part also was there. And, yeah, all in all, this has been a journey which has been classically the road less traveled. And I guess all of us out there have learned. And I am sure, ma'am, the way you have kind of made the mark, you and the Sur ma'am in WCPT, and telling just that about, that India has done the job. India has, in the 2007 disaster management is listed under India's contribution to it, in the manifesto or in the guidelines. So I guess we have made our mark, and you have been one of the pioneers. And Ravi sir, about organic farming, that was a very interesting take. I mean, I have been very interested in farming myself, and thinking that I'm going to do it when I retire. But I guess you are an inspiration that we can do it side by side. So all in all, we have got a lot of takeaways from this talk and this interview. And thank you, Bhave sir, for interviewing both of them as a couple. Actually, for Road Less Travel, this is the first couple interview. So I guess from Physio TV, I think we thank all of you all to being a part of this very, very interesting interview. And I hope Bhave sir can kind of take more interviews such, because they were very interesting. And Savita ma'am and Ravi sir, we are going to trouble you again very soon for Physio TV to take individual talks for our young budding therapists. I am sure your trailblazing blazing paths have kind of inspired us, and I want to learn more about whatever that is there for you all to offer to our therapists out there. So we'll be getting in touch with you soon, very soon. And
Thank you
thank
for
you
having us.
so much for all your time, your patience, and your contribution for this Physio TV talk. Thank you, Bhave sir, for initiating and telling us that no, this is going to be a couple interview, and let's see, we'll have both of them together, and that's going to be a very interesting take. And it did prove to be the same. So all in all, thanks a lot, ma'am. I will keep in mind about publishing and not taking gaps in my career from now on. It's a very interesting take. And thank you so much from the entire Physio TV family and Sancheti Institute of Orthopedics and Rehab, as well as Sancheti Institute of College of Physiotherapy. We thank one and all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you, Anil.